So what's the disturbing, raptured truth of why Jesus commanded us to remember Lot's wife? Out of all the characters in the Old Testament, he commanded us to remember this woman who was turned into a pillar of salt just miles from safety. Is that because it could be you or me, in the arms of the angels, ready to be raptured to safety, and zap, we're turned into the stuff that we were made out of? This is probably Jesus' most stern warning. Remember Lot's wife. Don't forget her, he says. What exactly did she do wrong? This is Bible teacher Nelson Walters, and you're looking at a pillar of rock on the west coast of the Dead Sea called Lot's wife. It's a 9-foot tall piece of rock. Obviously, it's just a tourist attraction, but does it help us remember that she was a real person in a real location? This rock is found near a place called Mount Sodom, and on the plain of the Dead Sea, just miles from this site, are the actual pillars of salt in the shape of city walls, buildings, and even a sphinx. Real evidence of massive cities turned into this same salt as Lot's wife. Jesus referred to Lot and his family in Luke's gospel record. Jesus began regarding what he called the days of Lot, the days of Sodom, likewise. And he said that because he was referring back to the days of Noah that he had just spoken of. Just as it was in the days of Lot, they were eating and drinking, buying and selling, planting and building. But on the day when Lot went out from Sodom, fire and sulfur rained from heaven and destroyed them all. It will be just like this on the day the Son of Man is revealed. Luke 17:28-30. So Jesus said the days before he comes back will be just like the days of Lot that he spent in Sodom. This is a big clue. What were those days like? For one, they were days of perversion and debauchery, right? I mean, let me ask you a question. In the history of society, has there ever been a single time where perversion and debauchery were more prevalent than they are right now? No, right? So that should place us firmly in the days of Lot that Jesus spoke of. So the days Jesus was referring to are the days we're living in right now today. And Jesus said people were living normal lives, planting crops, building buildings, not thinking the world that they knew was about to end, but end it did. Let's look at the rest of what Jesus said about that time. On that day, the day that the fire and brimstone is about to fall in the future, the day of the Lord, no one who is on the housetop with his possessions inside should go down to get them. Likewise, no one in the field should go back for anything. Remember Lot's wife. There's the warning. And part of that warning is to not go back for anything on that day, but just to leave with the angels. So obviously, Mrs. Lot was going to go back for something. What was it? Maybe if we look at the Sodom and Gomorrah accounts, we can figure it out. And perhaps this will help us prepare for the day of our own personal rescue. And also for the days that we're living in right now. So let's get started. Lot was a man of faith. You may not have realized it, just like Abraham was. Think about it. When God called Abram, as he was first called, to go to the land that God would show him, Sarah, who was first called Sarai, his wife, Lot, and Abram's dad all made the first part of a trip. They traveled from Ur in the nation of Sumer to the city of Haran, which was once of very large strategic importance in southeastern Turkey, so it wasn't a small city. But when it came time to leave for Canaan, Terah, Abram's dad, did not have the faith to keep going. But Lot did. Lot traveled with Abraham and Sarah all the way to Canaan. Let's look what the book of Hebrews has to say about this trip. Hebrews is talking about Abraham, but you could almost substitute the word Lot there as well. Hebrews 11, verse 8. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. Verse 9. By faith, he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents, with Isaac, Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. So the Bible is pretty clear that what these folks were doing was an act of faith, and that includes Lot. Once they got to Canaan, which would eventually become the nation of Israel, there wasn't enough grazing land for both Abraham and Lot's flocks. So Abraham gave Lot the choice of where he wanted to go, east or west. Lot kind of made a mistake. He chose the most fertile land, the plain of the Jordan near Sodom. Lot, we are told, initially pitched his tent near Sodom, but when the account really begins, we find he is actually living in a house in Sodom. Sodom in today's world is a synonym for evil, so for economic advantage, Lot moved right into the wicked city, the worldly city. 1 John 4, the apostle tells us that those who love the world don't have the love of God in them. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us when Lot met or married his wife, but we can assume it was likely that he met her in Sin City in Sodom, because we don't hear about her until Lot is already there. The Bible doesn't name her, but in Jewish tradition, which is the book of Jasher, chapter 19, Lot's wife is named Ado. And we know from Genesis 19 that Lot and Ado, if that really was her name, had 2 unmarried daughters and son-in-laws. So we might assume from this that they had 2 more married daughters, and that is what the book of Jasher confirms. Now, some people might say, hey, wait a minute, my Bible says they were pledged to be married to those unmarried daughters. Well, the Jewish word that's used in this passage actually says they took his daughters as wives. So this had already been consummated. These are 2 other daughters. The book of Jasher also indicates Lot and Ado had a daughter who was killed. We're going to get to that in a moment. So we mentioned this Jasher. It's just Jewish tradition. It's not scripture, but the book is mentioned in scripture and was highly respected. Now, as you know, at that same time, God and 2 angels visited Abraham and Sarah to tell them that in a year Sarah would give birth to the child of promise, to Isaac. So that pretty well dates for you when the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah happened, by the way. While they were there, God sent the 2 angels to Sodom because he planned to destroy the city for its wickedness. God and Abraham had a famous negotiation at that point. Abraham pleaded with God not to destroy Sodom. He asked if there were 50 righteous souls. Would God relent? God said yes, for 50. Abraham then kept dropping the number all the way down to 10. So 10 was the number for which God would relent his destruction. This may have been the number of family members that Lot had, if you think about it. Lot, his wife, 2 unmarried daughters, 2 married daughters, and son-in-laws, and the daughter who died. So that's 9. So only 1 more from that town that archaeologists tell us was tens of thousands of people big. Just 1 more is all they needed. But we know they didn't even have that. Now, in Jasher 19, we learn about 2 interesting encounters with the judges of Sodom. In one, Eleazar, Abraham's servant, was hit on the head by a man from Sodom, causing his head to bleed. Eleazar was fined for this, but believe it or not, that's how crazy their laws were there. And then we hear the story of Lot's other daughter, Paltith, who was killed. Apparently, according to Jasher, Sodom had a law against feeding any stranger who came into town. They also had a custom about gang raping strangers, but we'll get to that in a moment. So one day a stranger came into Sodom, and as was their custom, they were starving him to death. Paltith, Lot's daughter, had compassion on him and was sneaking food to him. Unfortunately for her, the townspeople caught her and brought her to the judge. Here's what the book of Jasher 19:34 through 35 says about her punishment. And they took Paltith and brought her before their judges. And they said to them, thus she did do, and it is she who supplied the poor man with bread. Therefore, he did not die all this time. Now, therefore, declare to us the punishment due to this woman for having transgressed our law. And the people of Sodom and Gomorrah assembled and kindled a fire in the street of the city, and they took the woman, that's Paltith, and cast her into the fire, and she was burned to ashes for helping a person. What was the exact moment that God decided to burn Sodom and Gomorrah to ashes. Was it this one? Although we don't know this story is true, it's from Jasher, not the Bible, it matches what Ezekiel 16:49 says about Sodom. Behold, this was the guilt of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters had pride, excess of food, and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and needy. In fact, this line from Ezekiel that I just read is a direct quote from the book of Jasher, 1944. That tells me that the story is accurate. And then, of course, was the famous account in Genesis 19 when the two angels of God came to town, and all the men from every quarter of the city came to Lot's house, and they were there saying that they wanted to gang rape them. Jesus told us in Luke 17 that the days before his coming will be like the days of Sodom. Is this what we are to expect? Violence, like what happened to Eleazar. Sexual violence, like what was almost done to the angels. Unjust laws, starving people, and killing those who try to help them. Maybe so. Maybe that's part of what Jesus is trying to get across in calling them the days of Lot. After the angels struck the men of Sodom blind, they asked Lot, "Have you anyone else here?" And they meant in the city. "Son-in-laws, sons, daughters, or anyone you have in the city. Bring them out of the place, for we are about to destroy this place, because the outcry of its people has become great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it." Genesis 19:12-13. Lot went to his son-in-laws and told them, but they only laughed at him and stayed behind and were consumed by the fire that followed. This is exactly where we are today. Jesus told us his return will be just like the days of Lot and Sodom. In Luke 17:29-30, but on that day, when Lot went out from Sodom, fire and sulfur rained from heaven and destroyed them all. So will it be on the day when the Son of Man is revealed. So on the day we go out from this kingdom, the kingdom of the world in the rapture, on that same day, Jesus and his angels will burn up a third of the world in the trumpet judgments. God is giving us Lot's same instruction. Save anyone you can. I'm burning this place up in just a short period of time, so go out and find them. Now, returning to Lot's account, the next morning when the angel said it was time to go, the Bible tells us Lot lingered. So much that the angels had to take him and his family by the hand and drag them out of the city. Why was Lot lingering? Why did his wife look back? But Lot's wife, behind him, looked back and she became a pillar of salt. Genesis 19:26. What was so valuable in Sodom that Lot's wife would hesitate and turn back? The book of Jasher gives us an idea about that as well. In Jasher 19:52-53, Ado, the wife of Lot, looked back to see the destruction of the cities, for her compassion was moved on account of her daughters, who remained in Sodom, for they did not go with her. And when she looked back, she became a pillar of salt, and it is yet in that place unto this day. So her married daughters were still in the city. This brings us to the rapture application. The time to prepare your family and loved ones for the day of the rapture is right now. When Jesus sends his angels to gather us together, it's going to be too late. But it's not too late today. So go prepare some folks. But once the angels come for us, will some people turn back like Lot's wife? People who Jesus was willing to take in the rapture, and they miss out. Yes, absolutely. Look at Jesus' exact words from Luke 17:31-32. On that day, let the one who is on the housetop with his goods in the house not come down to take them away. So don't go after anything physical. And likewise, let the one who is in the field not turn back. Remember Lot's wife. Why would Jesus give us this warning if it wasn't possible? So it is possible to forsake your place in the rapture by looking back. Probably for your loved ones. What else could be more important? Remember, the time to take them to Jesus is right now, not then. You can just imagine Lot and his wife running down the road with the angels away from the city when all of a sudden Lot's wife hears this incredible noise and can hear the impact of the fire and brimstone of the city and the cries of the people from the city. And she turns around and in her foolishness, but her compassion for her daughters, runs back to the city. And the heat turns her into ashes. It's a sad story. In addition to this important application, look what else we learn from this short teaching of our Lord's. We see the angels are those who are going to take us. Some don't believe that, but in the parable of the wheat and the tares, Jesus confirms it. The reapers are the angels, he said. Second, fire and sulfur are going to fall on the exact same day as the rapture. Did you know that? And of course, that you can lose your place in the rapture if you hesitate. And after that teaching about Lot's wife, Jesus told the disciples the strangest parable in the whole Bible about eagles gathering where the body was. Click right here to keep watching if you've ever wondered what that parable is all about. It certainly is strange, and Jesus was so impressed by it, he told it twice. Till then, this is Nelson, and I'll see you there.